Conversations Club, the show where we talk everything about business and where we give listeners a seat at the table. I'm Keelani Hall, and today we are talking about how to prepare for networking events, because we just don't show up, we prepare, and we move with strategy. And I'll be dropping keys throughout this episode, so make sure you listen all the way through. Just a quick recap, for the last few episodes, I've discussed talking about one, how to create your pitch, knowing what questions to ask, as well as some things to even think about when it comes to pitching yourself, as well as the mindset to have when it comes to networking. But, at this stage, you've applied those keys and, you're attending networking events, or, you're planning to go to a happy hour. Now, if you haven't listened to those episodes, make sure you go take a listen before proceeding on, and stay tuned. And so for the past few episodes, I've talked about how to find networking events and some of the beauty that can come out of networking, from relationships, partnerships, lifelong connections, as well as providing value to the ecosystem. Now, when it comes to these things, it really means nothing if you have all these keys and you do nothing with them. And so we have to push from just having information into application. And so you can find networking events, and that's great. But aside from having like your pitch, there are other steps that you need to have before you go to these events, start speaking with people. And I'm going to break those down to you. And so once you find an event, look at the flyer, because the flyer is going to tell you a few things. Now, the flyer can include the speakers, the dress code, as well as a little information about like the vibe for the event, because that should tell you a little bit about your approach, whether you should be more lax or whether it's more formal. And so even with that, prepare a list of questions. Don't just write them down on a piece of paper, keep that in your pocket, be looking at it throughout the event. But when it comes to things, if any, just look at it a few times. Sometimes we have a little brain freeze or a little brain fog, and, just take a quick glance at it, put it back in your pocket, enjoy the rest of the night. And then 3, review your elevator pitch for the event. Now, I'm going to connect all these for you. So when it comes to networking, if you know the speakers and all the companies at the event, that's going to help you, because that gives you an opportunity to do research and be strategic about the event. You could set aside time. You're like, hey, I want to speak with this person. This is a career that I'm interested in, or I'm looking to get into this space, and I know that this company and this executive from that organization is going to be there. And so let me set aside some time to go speak with them, gain some traction and see what can happen from that moment. And even when it comes to doing research, one of the things is it's going to provide, I would say, a few points for yourself, so to speak. And what do I mean by that? Now, when I say it provides you a few points, because when it comes to networking events, and one of the things that I've noticed is sometimes people have like generic or general information about a company, about an organization, or about a person. Now, when it comes to you doing research, that's going to provide you with a little bit of market intelligence and some insights that's beyond just the normal surface information. So that way you're able to extract more out of the conversation and have some meaningful traction versus if, you just had general knowledge about a person or organization. This is going to put you ahead of the game, and it's also going to help distinguish you from other people that person or representatives from that organization has spoken with, because they're going to see that, one, you're more hungry about the situation and that you've done more than everyone else that they've encountered. And people remember that. I've been to events, sitting in meetings where people mention, some market intelligence that they acquired, or how one person stood out above everyone else because of how they positioned themselves and what they knew about the organization, as well as the space for the person that they were speaking with. Now, when it comes to this, and the reason why I say you should look at the flyer is you don't want to be that person that's speaking to a CEO or one of the speakers that's on the flyer, that recently raised, let's say, $50 million in funding. And they had plans to do, let's say, some international endeavors. And it's in newsletters, it's been posted on social media, it's on their LinkedIn, And then when you come and you encounter this person, you ask them, about their future endeavors, and, see what their strategic alignment is, or if you guys have that. And all you had to do was a quick Google search to see that information, or Crunchbase, LinkedIn, but you didn't do that. And so now they're looking at you confused because everyone in the venue knows this information except you. And all it took was a quick 5-second search for you to see this information. I've had stories of people who have had these encounters. It has happened to myself. However, I have a defense in my case. When I was invited to an event, however, I didn't have a flyer. I was just supporting a friend, and the person I was speaking with was one of the hosts of the event. Now, with that, I did not know that. This is my first time going to one of these kind of events, meeting some people from a whole different network. However, when I started asking them questions, it was almost like I should know this information. And so it gets to a point where I see that I'm gaining no traction, and I just let it go. Now, I just want you to learn from my mistakes and not do that and come in prepared. And not saying that you have to know everyone that's at the event, but this is going to help you put yourself ahead of the game and, just to be mindful about these things. Now, when it comes to networking, you're always going to learn something new, so don't put too much pressure on yourself. Now, with all that being said, one of the things that I want to talk about is one of the avenues or ways that you can go about finding information is, again, checking out LinkedIn, looking at Google, or even like their social media. Some people are more up to date on their social media versus like their LinkedIn. Some people just check LinkedIn here and there. Even though we're in like the business arena, engaging with people from different industries. But, information is knowledge. And so you have to do your homework versus, I would just say, a basic search, because that's going to help you extract valuable information and make more meaningful connections. That way, look at news articles. There always might not be a necessary article directly correlating to that person, but one of the things that I've come to find out is that sometimes people value market intelligence. If someone is in a specific industry and that some world event has just transpired that affects their industry, that's one of the things that you can talk about, as well as pose questions, give potential thoughts even about that, where a person will value that versus if, you have nothing to really say or add to that space. People love market intelligence. They're more apt to speak with you and talk with you and engage with you in a more meaningful conversation if that's something that you have in your belt. And so that's something I always encourage. That's something that I've seen with others that has helped them be successful, even with dialogue. And now when it comes to the next phase, one of the things when it comes to the attire, one of the things that I mentioned earlier is you have to look the part. Now, when it comes to an event, there's usually like some dress code, or it could be signified by either the description that was given out or even by the time of the day. Now, as for the dress code, one of the pieces of advice that I was given is dress better than the person that you're speaking to. And that's some information that was given by a CEO at an event I was at for like a few days in Tulsa. And he said it's always better to dress up than to dress down. And so when it comes to your attire, always be intentional and make sure you look your best, because one of the things that speaks for you is sometimes how you look before you ever say a word. There's a difference between a person that is in a suit, standing with confidence and walking boldly that, hey, you want to go talk to them, versus a person that's more lax in their attitude or even in their attire, where some people can get like insight about them. Not saying that that's the overall content of the book. However, with that, those are one of the things that can help you stand out. Because I was at a networking event and I was talking to this guy, had a really good pitch, really good story, but one of the things that he said to me while we were talking is that, one, he wears this yellow hat on purpose when he comes to events. And, I found that to be quite interesting, because some people don't always think about that, like what are those unique things about you that you can elevate. And so when it came to him explaining to me, like, why he does this, one of the things that he says is that by him wearing that yellow hat, that's one of the ways that people remember him. Now, because of that yellow hat, I remember him outside of his amazing personality as well as his story and his pitch. I still remember his name. I know what he does. I know the space that he is growing into. And so for me, one of the things that helps me stand out is my hair before people see me. Is people can say, hey, that's Kalani all the way across the room before they ever see my face. Now, when I change my hair, people, like, they might walk past me or something. But before people encounter me, they usually mark me by my hair. Another thing that I use is my personality. However, if I don't see a person or speak with them, they may not have an opportunity to engage with that, but they'll always remember me by my hair. And so when it comes to those unique things about you, or like even your attire, if you have something that's cool and that's dope and that helps you stand out, then push it a little more, elevate it. Because you have to remember is, one, you're in a room full of a whole bunch of amazing people that's looking to do the same thing that you're doing, make connections, they're engaging with a lot of people, but you want to have that one thing that's going to help you stick out from the rest of the group. And so I just want to put this disclaimer out there, is just determine what that thing is and elevate it. And the next key is creating a list of questions. And so when it comes to this, I do want to put a disclaimer out there is, there's something that I do in business called a stakeholder analysis. Now, a stakeholder analysis is knowing what parties you're going to encounter, who you're engaging with, understanding the things that they value, as well as some things, their focal points. Let's just call them like that, the things that they're interested in. And so when it comes to that, and you may be asking, Kalani, what do I mean by that? So when it comes to like your list of questions, you're not going to say or have the same questions that you have for a CEO, that you have for an investor, or that you have for an entrepreneur, or that you have for an advisor. And so all these people, even though they're at this networking event, they have different goals. They have different objectives in mind, as well as things that they're looking for. And so while you're creating your list of questions, have that in the back of your mind. People think differently, people value different things. And so what do they value? Those are some of the things that you have to think about. And lastly, when it comes to your audience, again, you've created that phenomenal pitch, knocking it out the park. But when it comes to your audience, you're going to tweak it as you go. And so you have to study your audience and know who is in the room. Because if there's someone that you're speaking with that has a more technical background, then you're more so at liberty, if you guys are in the same industry, to speak and use more technical jargon. However, that's not always everyone's cup of tea. That's something I've learned. I was in a meeting with one man. He asked me what did I do. I just kept it simple. He was like, I like that you did that, because some people like to use, I'm going to just say this exquisite vernacular when they just could have said some simple terms. And so just think about that. And also you have to think about when it comes to things is if you're encountering someone that's from a different industry, you guys may use the same acronyms or the same acronyms, but they have different meanings. And so I would say, again, keep like the vocabulary at, I would say, simple jargon, nothing that's too out of the park that everyone can understand, because that way you're going to have more meaningful conversations with that. And so that's all that I have for you today. But before I close out this episode, I just want to say, make sure you have your business card in a way for people to connect. I've been at networking events and, I was seeking to connect with someone, and I asked them for the information, but they didn't have a business card, they didn't have a LinkedIn, a QR code, anything. And so with that, there's multiple ways that you can create a business card. There's things such as the dot card, or there's QR codes that you can use, because, we're more technologically savvy. People are moving beyond business cards a little bit. And so that way you have that right in your arsenal. Just airdrop it, let the person scan it, and they have information to your website, what you do, or ways to connect to you. And so just have that prepared, because you don't want to have all these dope conversations and then there's no way to connect with you after. You're going to meet some amazing people, but you have to stay connected in order to foster those relationships. Now, with all that being said, I just want to say thank you for tuning into the Keys and Innovations Club, and make sure you subscribe to the YouTube, the Anchor, all the platforms out there if you haven't done so already. And I just want to say thank you for listening. But before we go, again, I want to tell you that you are phenomenal. And so go knock things out the park. Go let your light shine. Allow people to see how phenomenal you are. And before you go, make sure you leave a review for your favorite podcast, and stay tuned for the next episode as I discuss more about those awkward moments at networking events, as well as how to navigate those situations and maximize it. See you soon.